I'm thrilled by this, and the whole reason why I wanted to conduct this interview was specifically to talk to you as you have all of a sudden popped out publicly and backed up something that I was almost the only person talking about. But I do want to make it clear that despite the fact that there's all this hate about me on the internet, and I am primarily a guy who writes about UFOs, the reason why I was trusted with this information is very simple. I'm not anonymous. It's my real name. I'm out there. I'm brave enough to talk about this stuff and risk whatever could come my way. And all it takes is for people to step up and do that. I happen to do that. So I'm sorry if people wanted somebody else, but this is what you got. I'm the one that they told, and now you've come forward, and I really appreciate that. I also want to just kick in here one very important point, and that is that if you go back to the origin of the Illuminati, which was revealed when documents from the original group founded by Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria were seized after an Illuminati henchman was struck by lightning on his horse, and then the Bavarian government officials found these Illuminati charter documents in his breast pocket of his blazer. It was from that point onward, in a series of other arrests that have happened since then, that they found that one of the key areas that these people want to control and completely dominate is science. And so in my book, Source Field Investigations, I have presented information regarding the truth of science and the truth that has been suppressed. It's very important to understand that human health does not require the products of the pharmaceutical companies. There is an aspect of human health that is related to consciousness. There is an aspect of human health that is related to good diet. And there are aspects of human health that are strictly energetic, and I'm talking about cures that require nothing but energy. And that energy, believe it or not, can be harnessed by building a pyramid, and it appears that the ancients who did this were much more knowledgeable than we gave them credit for. And so my point in bringing this up is that the scientific suppression is vast, and it includes a variety of information about the idea that our DNA, its primary function is to store photons. There's about 1,000 photons per DNA molecule, and when you have an area of your body that's sick, it loses those photons, and your DNA doesn't have those photons in them anymore. That's how you can measure where sickness is. A guy by the name of Dr. Fritz Albert Popp studied cancer and found that the only commonality between carcinogens is that they scramble light that comes in at 380 nanometer wavelengths, which is ultraviolet. What does that mean? That means ultimately that since cancer is cells running out of control in your body, the ultraviolet light that's stored by your DNA, which would break out when he broke open a DNA molecule, by the way, that light is being stored to send control messages to the cell that tells it to stop reproducing. Now, this is one of a vast variety of things that all leads into my main point, which is that it appears that we are going through some sort of evolutionary stimulus to the energetic portion of our DNA. And this is not a random speculation. This is actually based, for example, on the work of Dr. John Hawkes, an anthropologist from University of Wisconsin, who has studied the last 5,000 years of mummies and grave sites that he could dig up and analyze the DNA, and he's concluded that our DNA has changed structurally by a whopping 7% in the last 5,000 years. That means that human evolution has already rapidly sped up on a genetic measurable level. You can trace it in the DNA. And in the last 100 years, there's also something called the Flynn effect, which is that IQ scores have had to be readjusted every decade because people keep getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And so all of this leads back to ancient knowledge about the times that we're now in, which was inherited by these Illuminati New World Order people. And I make a very compelling case that they are well aware of these ancient cycles. They know that the cycles end in 2012. They believed that this would result in some sort of catastrophic earth change, which is a misunderstanding. I want to make that point very clear if I bring this up at all. That is that the origins of these ancient prophecies can be traced back to two ancient civilizations, one of which was in Antarctica, which we call Atlantis, the other of which was in what's now Siberia. The Earth's position did shift at that time, but according to a variety of credible threads of evidence that I've tied together, it was actually the result of nuclear weapons being used. People don't realize that the Earth was home to very advanced civilizations that lost their technology because 90-95% of beachfront property, which is where everybody wanted to live, was inundated. But these people had very advanced knowledge, and that knowledge was passed down from the Siberian strain to Iran in the form of Zoroastrianism, to India in the form of Hinduism, and on into Europe. So you got to go back to Zoroastrian and Hindu prophecy. What did they say about what was going to happen in the times that we're now in? Because everything else, and this includes Hebrew prophecy, Christian prophecy, Islamic prophecy, you name it, they all trace back to these original seed teachings. When you read the original seed teachings, the Zoroastrians say that we're going to go into a period they call frasokererti, which is where time changes. Something very intrinsic happens that changes the nature of our reality. And it's always been a mystery as to what exactly do they mean by that. Same thing with Egyptian prophecy. Same thing with ancient Greek prophecy that they inherited. It all keeps going back to, the Hindus said this too, the coming of a golden age. It's been widely misconstrued that this was going to lead to some sort of catastrophic disaster. What it really says, if you go back to the Hindu prophecy, for example, is that great saviors would come to the planet, and they didn't specify exactly what that was, but that it would turn things around in such a dramatic fashion that evil would be completely wiped out. And if you go back to the Zoroastrian prophecy, the time of frasokererti I was speaking of, it says that evil actually withers away due to the concentrated and focused efforts of the just. And so what I believe is that here we are talking on this radio program, we're doing our own humble best to do what's right for the planet, and in some greater incomprehensible framework that we may not be able to fully understand, our ancient mothers and fathers squirreled away these prophecies for us today to let us know that things are going to be okay, that we can do this, and that what will happen once we uncork the bottle of the suppressed science, which has been deliberately held down, the benefits that we gain at that point are so much different than the society we have right now that it is literally equivalent to a dimensional shift. It is literally a coming golden age once the technologies are set free, and once people have such a massive awakening about the level of wrong that's been done. I believe that there will be a wave of compassion and a wave of sentience that people will have, where they say, my God, Hitler was just a footnote. Everybody says, oh my God, the Nazis, the Nazis, the Nazis. Well, that's just like one little bitty line item in the contract that happened to squirt out by accident compared to what's really there. And I think once people realize that, and once they see what's been suppressed, they're not going to want to be living in ignorance anymore, and they're not going to want to perpetuate these lies and these hatreds that have been so prevalent. So I just wanted to squeeze that in because that's where my perspective is, that I'm very much optimistic, and I believe these prophecies are speaking directly about what you're saying. I think that this action that you're referring to is fulfilling prophecies that have been in writing for 6,000 to 7,000 years or more. And we're actually watching now how they're going to be fulfilled, and for me, that's extremely exciting.
Well, the other part of it is that my understanding is that as we progress with this process, and I'm saying we, collectively, Americans, everybody that lives here, my understanding is that all of these things that have been hidden for so long are going to be exposed very publicly. These things that have not been taught are going to be taught, and that sort of thing. So imagine now a nation without secrets. Imagine not having to worry about somebody doing something funny in the dark, in a closet, where you can't see them. Pretty simple. And I've also done research in the areas you're talking about, and I found this to be extraordinarily interesting because the tablet that goes next to the law tablet of the Sumerians that they took from, they said, antiquity, also covers what you just said in terms of what is to come. And that was the part that I left that out simply. I don't deal with with a lot of the things that you do. That's not what I do. I have a tendency to be able to open doors, and I don't know how that works. I guess God's doing that, or something beyond what I can understand. And to be able to be a part, like I said, of setting a nation free again, I'm thinking about when I was around in the 1950s. And I'm thinking about how much fun we could have back then and not have to worry about being in serious trouble. Teenagers today get felony arrests for stuff we used to do all the time, and the police would get real upset with us, take us home, and Mom and Dad would definitely, I'd rather have a felony arrest than have what my Mom and Dad really wanted to do to me. Quite that simple. The ideology of morality can be contained very simply. How would you want to be treated in a situation? Or, how do you act? Now, people are going to want to know what to do. The secret to it is locally. You go down to the local level, get to know your neighbors. You get to know what's going on in the small town that's close to you where you go buy groceries. You find out what the problems are. If there's something you can do to solve a problem, go ahead and take care of it. You'll be amazed how many people appreciate it. They may not know you did it. And you don't have to worry about it. You know you took care of something. And this can grow into anything. This is what's called a county project. This is listed on Oath Keepers. This is listed on freedomrange.us, our website. And it gives you the information necessary to be able to be the person you really know you can be. And, think about not having to have guns anymore, because you don't have to worry about it. Now, there might be a problem. I don't know, David, how far the research has gone in terms of what our relationship to the animals are going to be, but I've had at least one mountain lion out here that decided to take exception and thought I was lunch, and so I took a shot in his direction, and he decided that wasn't a good idea, or she, and everything's fine. I got hissed at a few days later when it was out there, and I happened to walk out on the porch. So it knows who I am and knows that I'm not something necessarily that's on the menu anymore. Wow. And that's, other than that, I don't have any concerns. I love nature. I wouldn't live in the woods if I didn't. So, these are just, a few ideas. But think of something where you don't have these secrets. And David mentioned the sciences. I'm going to suggest that it goes even further than the sciences. It's going to require rebuilding a lot of the basic manufacturing so we can build these machines that treat people for diseases and take care of them. We're going to need farming. Whether the ascension, as a lot of people refer to it, or change in dimension, or whatever this great change that's supposed to be so great and beneficial does, I don't know. I have not been given that information. But the golden age is there. It's mentioned in the Sumerian tablets, and that's like 11,000 years ago. So if they knew about it back then, and the Maya picked it up and did a calendar that actually supersedes time, these guys are unwashed savages, and they knew about this. Okay, that tells me that somebody was a really, really good scientist, and out comes the knowledge, and away we go.
Yeah, in my book, I also explain how every level of cycle in the Mayan calendar is tethered to supercycles that underlie the planetary orbits, and that wasn't even discovered until the 1980s by an Australian scientist, and it wasn't even published until after the year 2000. And yet, how did they know?
Somebody had to tell them.
There you go. So another thing I just want to say here, because we're on 2 hours now, and I want to honor people's time.
Go for it.
Is that you're probably used to speaking on shows that are essentially Americentric. They're speaking to the patriots and the people who are wanting to defend freedom in America. We haven't talked about, obviously, the fact that there, as you said, is a G20, and there are other countries in which there are plenty of cabal conspirators involved in this whole thing. Have you been given any information as to this operation outside the continental United States?
Yes, I got some interesting information. Let's see, I'd say over the last 2 weeks. One of the things that's been going on is that the small nations of the world are getting tired of the bad guys that were operating out of the United States coming in and snatching up everything of value and then disappearing and leaving them in the dirt. Consequently, they got together and decided that was not cool. The other thing that they have is financial backing that is ancient. Now, by that I mean the original Chinese rulers, people in Taiwan, people in Vietnam. They're all throughout the eastern areas. This deals with the extraordinary accounts called global settlement accounts and things of that nature, as well as a funding organization. Benjamin Fulford has mentioned this extremely. Now, one of the things that took place recently, and this was something that I was really following closely, I found a couple of places that note world financial changes. One of those changes is that the unallied nations finally formulated an agreement. And the agreement was that they would have their own financial system. And that basically started last Thursday in terms of being operational. They actually turned it on for the first time to see that everything worked. Friday they tested it. Saturday they tested it for real in terms of transfer of small amounts of money back and forth so nobody noticed. And Sunday they gave the thing a rest, put it on standby, and they turned it on Monday morning. And I thought this was really neat. And didn't say anything to anybody. So here you have, and there's about 200 nations, give or take, out there. As I understand it, the non-allied nations that are participating in this, they number like 130 or 40, something along in there.
Right.
But they have stepped outside of the financial control of the G5, G20. They are outside of that and offer an immunity to the capability of these bad guys to get a hold of any finance. This is the reason that the Eurozone's having such troubles. This is the reason that the United States is looking real iffy, and it goes on from there. As this plan...
Well, the U.S. dollar is the global reserve currency as per the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the U.S. dollar is a Federal Reserve note.
Well, there's going to be a change, from what I understand, from what we have now, which is called a debt instrument, to an equity instrument. In other words, there's been enough dollars printed lately to probably sink something. I don't know the volume of the money that's been printed, but I do know that as a world reserve currency, there's a large load of dollars out there.
Right.
The number of dollars in relation to this new currency is such that a revaluation or refunding of or exchange of that number of dollars for this agreed-to currency supposedly puts us in a position of a basic one-to-one type of ratio of exchange for the little guy.
Good.
It does not include the big guys, from what I understand. I heard today that J.P. Morgan, Citi, and Bank of America were just about to collapse. Now, I don't know how true that is. We'll find out in the next few days.
Well, I put up something on my website right literally before I called you, and then as soon as I'm done with this interview, we're going to process it and get it up in that article.
Okay.
Regarding the public admission by J.P. Morgan that they are divorcing the Vatican, saying that the Vatican Bank was using J.P. Morgan bank accounts to pass funds through as sort of like just a very temporary holding facility. The funds didn't stay in J.P. Morgan, they just were shooting through it.
Yeah.
And they have completely closed that door, and it will be fully closed as of March 30th, 2012, and they only made the announcement on March 19th, 2012. That's a very, very interesting thing when you understand that these are two warring factions that used to be all working together.
Well, you're gonna have that kind of separation. Now, I'm not going to say that J.P. Morgan Chase is as innocent as they'd like to make themselves out to be.
Sure.
Then you want to take it a step further. I'm going to suggest that it may be a reversal of fortune in terms of you do got the Rothschilds and Rockefellers as two basic principles. If you can add minor people that call a lot of the shots, such as Bush and et cetera. The thing that I'm seeing is that you have a separation between the United States and the European Union simply for the idea of preservation. Now, I was told that from a couple of different people that I've listened to that know what's going on, that the European Union is very close to collapse in terms of the euro. As the euro goes, so goes the dollar in terms of our economy. Now, the other part of this is that you got about a 2-week span before it starts hitting here. The other part of what our plan entails is finance. There are old funds held by patriotic entities here in this country who have enough money or valued assets, however you want to look at that, to pay our national debt some 4 times over. Now, that would be sufficient funding to take care of pretty much anybody's needs for quite some time. Now, this is not one of the collateral accounts. This is private accounting.
Wow.
That's a big difference than what a lot of people have been talking about, to include Benjamin Fulford. And I respect that man,